Good morning and a happy Thursday, one and all. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Hope you're all fit and well. Just seen Jim Turner walking through the door while I was doing something else. There you are. There's Jim. Morning, Jim. How's tricks? Good to see you here. Good morning to Formosa Mario over on Instagram. Foreman Pipey, apparently. I don't know. Instagram names never cease to amaze me. Another packed show for you today, and we're going to be talking about those that lead us. And I mean lead us, not into temptation. Those that lead us nationally and quite possibly internationally, but also those that lead us in industry as well. We're going to do that in the morning monologue. And one of the things that's going to come up, one of the films that we've got for you a bit later on, in fact, it's the last film we're going to play today. It's from Hitachi or Landcros, depending how you feel about that. And they are asking a question. What do you call your machine? Try to keep it clean, particularly when it breaks down. But have you ever named a machine? And if so, what have you named it? In fact, I may even put a banner up on the show in just a moment. The chat is just beginning to spring into life. I think Jim was the first here. I tell you what, let's see if I can create a banner for that. There we are. That's one of those. We'll put it up the top of the screen, and there we are. We have a banner. What do you call your machine? I'd love to hear from you. Have you given it a nickname? Is it a boy's name? Is it a girl's name? Is it something more random than that? Do you refer to the beast or old girl or something like that? I'd love to hear from you. Dan Cullen. Dan seems like the kind of guy that would name his machine. Quite possibly something rude, but Dan, have you ever named a machine? Is it a term of affection or is it a term of utter frustration? Love to hear from you. I'll keep that running up at the top of the show. Yes, Dan, just to let you know, we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff today, but one of the key things we're talking about is those that lead us. And I mean, if I tell you the morning monologue today it's called Too Far Removed. I've just been reading about the new education secretary. Never actually worked in a school herself, although her parents were both teachers. Is that good preparation for an education minister? I'd love to get your take on it. Ken Hatter is here as well, and he's got the warm weather again. Dan says, I call mine Johnny. Johnny, okay. As come on, Johnny, you can do it. Okay, fair enough. Stefan Edwards is here as well from the wilds of the Netherlands. Good morning to you, Stefan. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Haven't seen your sidekick Gilles this morning, but I'm sure he's not too far away. As I say, loads and loads of stuff to get through today. A little bit political today as well, so look forward to that. Gary Muirhead has joined us, probably actually from the Shetlands. Good morning to you. Ken Hatcher saying, what does it say on the top banner? I can't see it. Yeah, okay. Well, I tell you what, I'll do this one first. Chris Ford says, morning, you hairy ass top men. Thank you very much indeed. I think he's talking to you. There we are. I've got an answer to this. So what it says at the top there, Ken, we're going to play a film at the end of the show today from Hitachi or Landcros, and they're talking about what you call your machine. They're trying to push this notion of referring to Hitachi machines as the reliable orange. Sounds a bit too much of a mouthful for me, but apparently people do name their machines. Gary Muirhead names the PlayStation. So Ken, the thing at the top of the machine, the top of the screen there, just there. Have you got a name for your machine? What do you call it? Is it a boy's name, a girl's name? Is it a term of affection? What is it and why? More specifically, apparently Gilles is on the road driving to a meeting. That's no excuse. He could listen in audio. Probably. I'm not into name machines, says Jim. Think boats and steam-powered vehicles should be named, though? Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. Boats are always female, aren't they? Are diggers? Are diggers always female? Are they male? Are they androgynous? Are they trans? I'd love to know. We've already had one gender name, Johnny from Dan. PlayStation, I guess, is fairly neutral. But do you name machines after girls or boys? Mark Whiting is here as well. Ken showing a distinct lack of imagination. He names his machine Kubota. I mean, I guess that saves time, and you've got a constant reminder because it's written on the boom and on the counterweight as well. Have you ever given another machine a name? Anyone go to the Well and Steam show at the weekend? Says Ken Hatcher. Not personally. Maybe Chris or maybe Jim or possibly both. That's very much their bag. Anybody going along to that? Love to hear from you. What I can tell you is that Fred won't be here tomorrow. He's actually going up to JCB. Nothing to do with diggers whatsoever. Him and a mate of his are going up to watch the Live Golf tournament. Thanks to connections within JCB. Thanks, Ewan. Managed to bag himself a couple of ground passes, so he's taking the journey up to Utoxeter tomorrow, early hours of tomorrow morning, and he's got a day at the golf watching. I don't know who's playing. The only ones I know are Rory McIlroy and Bryson DeChambeau, and I don't know if either of those are playing, but he's going up to that. So if anybody else is going along to the golf tomorrow, keep an eye out for a guy. He's probably going to be wearing a JCB hat, which under normal circumstances at the golf might make you stand out. Given that JCB are the host of this one, I don't think a JCB hat is going to be distinctive at all. Our friend from Down Under, New Zealand. Good day, guys, says Neil Bruce. Morning, Neil. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you back. And getting ready for Cromford Steam Rally next weekend. So there's plenty to come if you're a Steam fan. If I'm on bigger machines, I call them bibbity bop, bibbity boop. Let's go. Bibbity boop, bibbity bobbity boo. Yeah. It's a Disney movie. Snow White, is it? No, doesn't. Snow White's not right, is it? Sleeping Beauty, possibly. I don't. I've led myself down a dark path here and I don't know the way back, so I'm going to press a button now and get the show underway. Here we go. Did you ever get any footage from JCB Hydromax land speed record? Gary? Well, first answer is yes and no. Obviously, we went to the testing, and I am working on a film that charts that day, and speaking to the various people involved in that exercise. But the land speed record attempt isn't until August. So my plan basically is to get our film done of the build up to it, including the testing that was done here in the UK, get that done just in time, basically to coincide with the record attempt. But I am working on it. I've made a start. We've got a few bits and pieces in place, but that will be coming down the tubes as well. And here's an interesting point, okay? For a couple of reasons. Jim Turner says, machines are my safe space. Operating a machine is relaxing and therapeutic. It's where I do my deepest thinking whilst I'm on autopilot. If you were watching our WhatsApp group yesterday, you'll know that I've launched my new YouTube channel. And I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. But here's the thing. I'm using a device it's an AI voice recorder. So you jot down notes and, in my instance, interview transcripts and stuff. I basically just stick it under somebody's nose. It records all that was said. And one of the things that I've put on the YouTube channel is a community post, which is basically a question. Where do you do your best thinking? And it's interesting that Jim's come up with that. He does his while he's in a machine. I do mine in the car. And I've got to be honest, I don't know about you, Jim. I mean, you seem like maybe you do your thinking better than me. One of the things, because I'm always surrounded by technology, I actually find driving in a car generates ideas, but I have a real issue with actually making note of them and making sense of them. And this new device I've got, it's called Pocket AI. I've started to use that. So I've got it in the car because so many times, you're driving along and you think, oh yeah, I must do that. Or I've got a great idea for an article or an intro for an article. And by the time you actually pull over and you can do something about it, it's gone. Not anymore. But where do you do your best thinking, people? I'd love to know. Dan saying that's so true. I do the same too. I think a lot in the machine. Yeah, I think that. I think if you're constantly doing something that you're familiar with, and autopilot. I know Jim referred there to driving on autopilot. I guess to the uninitiated, that notion of driving on autopilot suggests that you're disengaged and maybe you're less safe. That's not the case at all. I can drive. I mean, I drove up to Bircham Newton the other day, 4.5 hours there, about 5 hours back. And I was fully aware, fully aware, I was completely aware. I was aware of what's going on around me, but I can kind of switch another part of my brain to, you just tick over in the background, see what you can come up with. And it works very, very well. Anybody else do their best thinking in the cab of their machine? And also, don't forget, at the top of the screen there, what do you call your machine? We're looking for names and nicknames for machines today. While you're doing that, let's have a bit of Caterpillar tilt rotator, and then we're going old school. The subject of where you do your best thinking. Gary Muirhead says this: I do my best thinking sitting on the toilet pan every time I get any peace and quiet. Funnily enough, and I'm not going to talk about toilets as such, when we had a full house here, when there was me, wife, and 4 children, and sometimes boyfriends and girlfriends as well, I used to go and have a nightly bath around about 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the evening. I'd already had a shower that day. I was, I don't do anything strenuous, so I'm already clean. You can still smell the deodorant on me, but I used to go and sit in the bath for about an hour just to get a bit of me time, just be alone with my own thoughts. Not that they're particularly deep or profound, but I'd be alone with my own thoughts. But toilet works just as well. Anyway, look, let's start with some equipment, shall we? And let's start by. Well, I mean, it's a current machine, but it does feel very old school. Let's go scraping, shall we? Going back to the naming of machines, we had this from Stephen Edwards, who says, my colleagues will no doubt give their machine a name. I only know the name of one machine, and that's a Hitachi 1200. It's called Big Red. What a fantastic name for an Hitachi 1200, because guess what? It's big and reddish. Big orange, possibly. But Mick Norton's here as well. Good morning, Mick. Going back to Jim, who says this, once I have an idea or design, the rest is out of my control. I'll come back to that. My mind takes over and keeps playing and adjusting things until it's fully thought out and analysed. Then it becomes a fully formed idea that I consider satisfactory and ready for the next step. It's interesting you should say that. And obviously, you and I, Jim, are doing very, very different jobs. But I get that when I'm writing. When I have an idea, I sometimes get to the end of an article and think, well, I didn't expect to end up here. I didn't see that outcome coming. And I remember an interview years ago with my literary hero, Stephen King. Sorry, I got waylaid there. Stephen King, who was apparently, he got a lot of flack when the book for Pet Sematary came out. He got a lot of flack over the fact that in the very literally the opening pages, there's a little 3-year-old boy is killed by a truck, and that kind of sparks the events that turn into Pet Sematary. And he was, how could people were saying, how could you kill a 3-year-old child? That's awful. And he said, I never intended to. That's how it wrote itself, and that is exactly the way it works. Neil Bruce says, I missed that. Was that J-Swap here in New Zealand? I can't imagine there's too many companies called J-Swap, so probably. I thought they were in America, but you could well be right. Going back to Big Red, apparently it is big and it's red because it's actually painted red. Okay, fair enough. Doesn't a dozer look odd without a blade? It does. It's a bit like looking at a person that usually wears glasses and then suddenly doesn't. It's like, what's wrong with your face? You're absolutely right. Love that music. Yeah, indeed. Maybe it was the music that led me to believe it was actually an American machine. Dan says this, when machine's not working, hang on a minute. Come on, you bitch, or you, yes, pull your act together. I'll leave it at that. You get the idea. Dan, thank you for that. Wow, what a name. J-Swap. Who remembers Big Geordie? I remember Big Geordie. Yeah, I do remember Big Geordie. What you're swapping out today, Mr. Swap? Yeah, good question. I'm assuming there is a Mr. J Swapper, or there has been at some point. I'm going to say good morning to Digger Lid over on Instagram. Good morning. They've been here before. I should make a better note of these things and actually go and look up who they are afterwards. And our friend Ultra Manx is over on Instagram as well. So listen, all of the people are here. We're going Sennebogen in a moment, but not diggers this time. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
There you are. There's another one on his return journey. Ender Lee, good morning. Good morning, boss. Listen, I'm barely the boss of myself, let alone anyone else, but thank you very much indeed for pitching up and being here to make up the numbers. Right, Sennebogen. It's big and it's green. Maybe this is big green to go with big red that Brown and Mason are running. Here we go. There you are. I just had a look at Diggerlid while you were all watching that. I had a look at Diggerlid. I think they're based in probably Australia, quite possibly New Zealand. I didn't have a chance to check it thoroughly, but they do some really interesting stuff. If you're on Instagram, go and look them up. They're called Diggerlid, Diggerlid, Diggerlid. Simon Tomlin is back. Good morning. This is all our best friends coming back together. We used to have a Terex scraper. It was known as the Green Goddess. Wasn't the Green Goddess wasn't the Green Goddess like a fire engine or something like that? But there was also, wasn't there a Green Goddess doing like aerobics on the telly at some point, probably back in the 80s? Green Goddess. There was Mad Lizzie. I remember Mad Lizzie, and I'm sure there was, am I making that up? I could well be. Listen, I'm a man of a certain age. I don't remember anything. We're going to be going deep with a Volvo mini excavator after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
I did myself a disservice. The Green Goddess was indeed a fire engine, and it was also the name of an aerobics person called Diana Moran. Diana Moran, who used to do things, aerobics. Do you remember that? What a simple time that was, where you tune into breakfast TV with Ann Diamond and Nick Owen, and somebody would come on and do aerobics. Whatever happened to on TV aerobics? Jim Turner says, I have a 5-acre field that is next to my new house. I want to plant tree avenues and a tree strip on 2 sides of the field, but I've designed and drawn up the planting areas. But right now my mind is deciding where different types of trees are going. To describe the thought process is, imagine a Rubik's Cube going around inside your head, constantly adjusting it until I'm satisfied. Yeah, I mean, I can't relate to that, but the way, I mean, if I tell you yesterday's morning monologue, where I was talking about the 2 widows, I actually wrote that in my head on my way back from the CITB, and I had an ending, I had a beginning, and I had a little bit of middle, but it was only when I actually sat down and said, oh no, that bit goes, and yeah, I know the feeling only too well. Andy Thornton is here as well. Good morning, Andy. Dan Cullen enjoying the Sennebogen tune, and he says, I do love the Sennebogen colours. They really stand out. They do indeed. They're one of the highlights when you go to Bauma in particular. You've got Liebherr over here, which is always fantastic. Komatsu over there, which is absolutely fantastic. And smack bang between the two of them is the Sennebogen stand, which stand out because they have some of their big cranes and their big excavators, but also you can see them from a mile away. Find that green colour. Guy here was saying the Gale skid steer is far superior to the Bobcat, and he's been on a skid steer for 20 years. Interesting stuff. I mean, I've driven both, but I've driven Bobcat more, so I kind of lean that way. Not because they're paying me to say so. I've probably just had more exposure to the Bobcat. But yeah, I mean, listen, Gale are a big company. They're owned by Manitou. They're not messing about. If anybody's got any more Bobcat or skid steer experience, see, I just, there's the thing. Bobcat, such a big name in skid steers, I just automatically said Bobcat. I mean, skid steers. But if anyone's got any skid steer experience and they would like to share their preference, then please let us know. We've featured the Volvo EC40, the Volvo EC50 over the past 2 weeks, but it's time to do the little one of the trio. This is the EC37.
Today we will be taking a closer look at the EC37. The EC37 has a maximum dig depth of 11 feet 3 inches, 25 horsepower, and weighs 8,300 pounds. This model is equipped with a 9-foot boom with offset cylinder below the cab. We have long life steel bushings that allow us to have 50-hour greasing intervals. This machine has an additional long arm at 5 foot 11 inches. This machine can have a standard float blade or angle blade. This unit is also equipped with a Volvo hydraulic quick coupler. This OEM coupler can be operated from inside the cab, allowing the operator to switch buckets or turn the bucket 180 degrees. A manual coupler is also available. At Volvo, we recognize the importance of safety, quality, and comfort. This cab is equipped with ROPS, Level 1 FOPS, and TOPS certification. We have an orange grab bar independently bolted to the side, where it would be easily replaced if damaged. Our large cab entry is just under 20 inches, making it one of the largest in the industry. Additionally, the Volvo will also have an orange footstep that will provide you with better traction when getting in and out of the cab. Below the entry, we have a lockable toolbox, making for a perfect storage solution for chains, grease guns, or any other tools. Taking a look at the back of the machine, we are going to have the exclusive to Volvo hydraulic filter. This additional filter allows the hydraulic motors and hydraulic attachments oil to be pre-filtered before going into the main hydraulic system. Additionally, in the back, you will have the main control valve plus the fuel fill. This allows us to inspect the control valve for any potential leaks every time you refuel the machine. Additionally, the hood acts as a protective cover when refueling and is lockable with the same key as the rest of the machine. As we move to the engine compartment, to save time, we have easy access to most maintenance items. This includes the starter, the belts, and the coolers. Taking a look inside the cab, the first thing you will notice is all the available room. The Volvo is going to provide a comfortable, safe environment that any operator would love to work within. The Volvo is going to have full-size metal travel controls, making operating a breeze and taking away from any potential wear points. As you can see, the controls are going to move with the seat. The armrests are adjustable as well, again providing that comfortable experience for the operator. The top window has an integrated storage area for the lower window, allowing for a smooth motion to raise both windows. Inside the cab, you will find a robust heating and cooling system with vents behind the seats, providing the operator with the utmost comfort. While in the cab, you will see the control lever that will operate the float blade. When creating a level surface at a job site, a float blade will handle the task with ease. A button will activate the float feature, leaving you full control to turn on or turn off with the ergonomic lever. The red button on top will control your high and low travel speed. Taking a look at the display, you will see just how customizable your operations can be. Operated by a jog wheel, there are numerous functions you can control inside the display. These functions include pattern control change, auxiliary hydraulics, flows, and if single or dual directions, allowing for multiple saved profiles. If you are interested or have any questions on what you heard today, please reach out to your local Volvo dealer. They would be more than happy to help.
Smart machine. Back to Jim, who says, I wish I'd dreamt more ideas. Eat more cheese before you go to bed, Jim. That's always a good way. Sadly, most of my dreams are proper random shite. I did dream an entire film up once. I had to write it down as soon as I woke up. If I hadn't, I'd have forgotten it. Up until not so long ago, I used to keep a notepad like that by my bed. Never dreamt entire articles or entire stories or entire videos, but I regularly used to dream, imagine intros, outros, themes, that kind of thing. That happened a lot. But as I say, I've got the new device now, and I whisper in it to not wake up the wife. And Dan is saying this, Mark, when can we meet up with Andy and have a catch up? I would suggest, Dan, I mean, I don't know quite how far along the road he is now, but Andy is working on his new business venture. I would suggest we wait until that goes live, and then we all meet up then. Bearing in mind, I've only got 22 days before I'm off for a fortnight as well, so I'm rapidly running out of time to do anything. But yeah, let's pick that one up a bit later on. Chris says, which manufacturer was the first with the jog wheel? I think Audi was the first in cars. I don't know. I wonder who that was. There's a bit of me that thinks, in all likelihood, it was Caterpillar, because Caterpillar do tend to lead the way in those sort of things. But I don't know. Why can't they put more power on these mini machines up to 13 tons? Some brands are very underpowered. Don't think you'd find that with Volvo, to be honest. Dan said, did you not show this last week, or was it a bigger one? No, in actual fact, we've kind of, I don't know why we've done it in reverse order, but we did the EC50, then we did the EC40, and now we've done the EC37. That's it. That's the three that Volvo have done films on, so we're done and dusted on that. Jim Turner says, I eat lots of cheese. Sadly, that's not my creative catalyst. Listen, I cannot recommend hallucinogenic drugs, but I've mentioned them. I'll let you think it through. Andy saying his new business venture is close. I'm glad to hear it. Looking forward to seeing it unveiled. Yeah, grand unveiling. And our friend Takashi 2057, who we haven't seen for a long while, has just arrived over on Instagram and just said, hot. Yeah. Not as bad. Well, where we are in the UK, it was bad last week. Not so bad this week. It's still warm. Don't get me wrong. It's still very warm, but not as bad as it has been. Right, people. We've got one more film for you, which is what inspired me to talk about machine names and stuff. We'll be back after this with Hitachi, Landcros. Speaking of which, you know, when they do actually do the switch over of the name, Dan, are you going to give them a clean sheet of paper? Are you going to forgive and forget everything that you ever said about Hitachi and start over? Or are you just going to change your criticisms from Hitachi to Landcros? Let me know. Back after this. Chris Ford says, Doosan was the first machine we had with a jog switch, but be interesting to know. I'm not even sure. I mean, I'll try Google Gemini. I'll be astonished if it actually comes up with an answer on it, but listen, you never know. And Andy Thornton says, I've had tons of 3 o'clock in the morning decisions, which were genius, right up to 8 a.m. in the morning when I realized how ridiculous they really were. I've had a few of those as well. I still, to this day, use the Notes app on my iPhone to record things like this. And I don't know whether I taught him, but Fred's ended up doing the same. And he's had an iPhone since he was at school. And a lot of the notes, some of it is music ideas, some of it is video ideas, some of it's just ideas and stuff like that. But he's got one from his school days, and the note just says one word, tiger. And to this day, none of us have got a single clue why he typed the word tiger. Yeah. Jim Turner says, drugs aren't my bag, and my mind is already capable of doing its own thing without needing me to initiate it. Fair play. Mick says, interesting, the Volvo clip gave all the data in feet and inches, perhaps to influence the USA market. It's actually an American film. I don't know quite the business setup, but obviously there is Volvo construction equipment, but there's Volvo construction equipment North America. That film was actually created for the American market specifically. Gary said, we used to have a dozer driver called Mr. McNasty who drove a D9. Mr. McNasty. So he sounds like a teacher out of a Harry Potter movie, doesn't he? Mr. McNasty. Right. Let's talk machine namings, and shall we? This is Volvo. It's not Volvo. It's Hitachi or Landcros or the reliable. It's something.
For years, you've found your own way to name the machines that carry your day. Not what the brochure says, not even what the badge says. What you call it, because you know it best. Call it the dependable one, a hydraulic miracle, Zaxxas 210, or call it impressive. Call it the beast, Old Faithful, Big Bro, or the surgeon. Call it Mr. Precision, Powerful Pete, your friend, your partner, or just call it Bertha. Call it the reason you come to work, call it the reason you finish on time. Whatever you call it, it will always be the reliable orange. And from April 2027, we'll call it Landcros.
Just talking amongst yourselves, I'm just talking to Google Gemini here to see if I can get an answer to Chris Ford's question. It's thinking about it. This makes for fantastic viewing, doesn't it? A man looking at a screen while nothing happens. I'll come back to it. Hang on a minute. Apparently, Hyundai was the pioneer. Apparently, in 2010, their 9 Series excavators, they paired a tactile rotary controller with a 7-inch cluster display. There you are. Kobelco adopted it in 2015, Caterpillar in 2017, and I think there was a few others as well. But while Hyundai got there first, other manufacturers quickly adopted it. So according to Google Gemini, which is not 100% reliable, but they are saying, or it is saying, that the first was Hyundai. There you are. You live and learn, don't you? Let's have a look. I know what I'd call it. I thought perhaps you would. Mick Connolly. See, Mick Connolly has arrived and he is the counter. He is the counter to Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen, not a fan of Hitachi. Mick Connolly, huge fan of Hitachi. Morning, Mick. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for restoring some balance to things. In actual fact, I think there's been a bit of a pro-Hitachi balance. We had Big Red from Stefan earlier on. We've now got our friend Mick describing them as a brilliant machine. Dan, you're in the minority, my friend. Didn't you say what you call it when it breaks down? Well, listen, I'm trying to keep this show family friendly. So what you call a machine after it's broken down, frankly, is neither here nor there and none of my business. But I think you have a point. Why have the Australians never started their own heavy plant manufacturer called G'day? And I can dream of the advert for the G'day digger. Listen, it may exist. For all I know, that may already exist. What are we doing next? What do we do about this time in the show? I know what we do. We sign off, don't we? Kind of. So that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very, very soon. Tomorrow would be good. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I will be back immediately after this. There is a familiar pantomime played out whenever a new Prime Minister walks through the door of 10 Downing Street. Out comes the new broom reshuffle, in come the fresh faces, and once again the British public is asked to believe that a politician who was overseeing transport yesterday is somehow uniquely qualified to run agriculture, education, or defence today. And nowhere is this absurdity clearer than in the return of Angela Rayner as Housing Secretary. Having previously resigned over a controversy involving underpaid stamp duty on a flat in Hove, she returns to direct the very department governing housing and property legislation. Asking someone who can't navigate the rules on a single residential purchase to solve a national housing crisis does require something of a leap of faith. And let's not forget, this is the same Angela Rayner who was one of the key advocates for Keir Starmer's 1.5 million new homes in 5 years plan that has subsequently crashed and burned, just as those of us in the industry predicted that it would. But as baffling as Whitehall's musical chairs may be to the average voter, those of us working in demolition and construction can't afford to simply shake our heads and chuckle, because the exact same disconnect exists right here inside our own industry. Think about what happens when a minister decides to engage with the construction world. They don't travel to a freezing site in November to talk to a machine operator about working conditions. Instead, they schedule a round-table meeting with company principals, corporate directors, and boardroom executives. These are individuals who, despite their impressive job titles, are often every bit as far removed from the day-to-day grind of a site as the politicians sitting across from them. It's a dialogue between two sets of suits, both speaking the language of corporate governance, while neither knows the price of a ton of crushed concrete or the reality of a site deadline. The only time a minister actually sets foot on a working demolition or construction site is for the obligatory, carefully choreographed photo op. We all know the scene. The minister arrives flanked by a squad of public relations junkies looking entirely out of their depth. They're draped in a brand new high visibility vest that has clearly never seen a speck of dust, and they're wearing a hard hat that's 3 sizes too big and it sits awkwardly on their head. They hold a shovel for 5 seconds, smile broadly for the press photographers, and then vanish back into air-conditioned ministerial cars. Pure political theatre where the actual site workforce serves merely as a prop. This staged interaction highlights a much deeper problem. Take a look at the bodies claiming to speak for us, most notably the Construction Leadership Council, alongside the vast network of trade associations, regulatory panels, and standards committees. Perched atop these organisations, you will find someone who has recently pulled on a... Let me do that again. Perched atop these organisations, you will rarely find someone who has recently pulled on a pair of site boots. Instead, these boards are populated by career executives, corporate strategists, legal advisors, and professional committee goers. The result? We're bombarded with top-down mandates, academic sustainability frameworks, and bureaucratic compliance regimes drafted by people who have never operated an excavator, managed a project, or suffered the indignity of using a site toilet. When those setting the rules are so thoroughly insulated from the reality of work, the directives they produce inevitably fall short. We end up with well-meaning regulations that look splendid on paper, but prove unworkable on a cramped site in central London or a muddy plot in West Yorkshire. We see sweeping environmental directives issued with zero appreciation of the realities on the ground. We're lectured on productivity by bodies composed of individuals who have never had to run a job to a commercial deadline. And this fundamental breakdown points to an urgent omission in our industry. We have plenty of organisations looking after corporate interests, lobbying for major contractors, and publishing high-level white papers. What we lack is a dedicated, uncompromised industry body that genuinely represents the needs, the safety, and the practical concerns of the men and women in the trenches, the operatives, the site managers, and the specialists who actually deliver the work. In Westminster, a minister can mismanage a portfolio, screw up their own property taxes, and simply wait for the next political weather shift to be handed the reins again. In construction and demolition, there's no such luxury. If a site plan is wrong, gravity doesn't wait for the next select committee inquiry. If a safety system is flawed, the consequences are immediate and very real. If the government really wants to fix the nation's infrastructure and housing, it needs to stop relying solely on corporate boardrooms and PR photo calls. It's time to create a space at the policy table for an organisation that speaks directly for the workforce on the ground. Until the sharp end of the industry has a real representative voice, we'll continue to be governed by people in oversized hard hats. Now, as a small follow-on to that, I singled out Angela Rayner, who is back as Housing Secretary. She was one of the proponents of the 1.5 million new homes in 5 years, which is now in tatters. Not going to happen. The housing sector is in free fall. All of that's gone completely tits up, but she's got the gig back despite the issue over her stamp duty. She's not alone. There is a new Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Science, a guy called Jonathan Reynolds. Jonathan Reynolds worked as a trainee solicitor, but never completed his training. He's never owned a business. In fact, he has never run a business either. And now he is heading up the Department for Business. And when you think, I mean, I don't know how many ministers we have, how many MPs we have, but when you think about how many people, just taking our industry as an example, how many people this industry employs, 3 million people work within the UK construction industry, and they've chosen to put somebody in charge of housing who basically has proven they know nothing about housing. How many people have run successful businesses, business ventures, either as an owner or a manager, and have got genuine experience to share? Right. Who have they put in charge of business? They put in charge of business somebody who has never actually been in business. There is a new education secretary. Now, admittedly, both of her parents were teachers. So I guess she has grown up around the teaching community, but she's never worked in a school. She dropped out after a year at Oxford. There's such a huge disconnect. And when you think about how our industry works, part of your remit And I'm talking your remit at both individual level and at corporate level as well. If you apply for a job as an excavator operator, yes, they're going to look at your competence card and what have you, but they're going to ask, have you ever driven a 14-ton excavator before? Yes, mate. Yes, I have. I've been doing it for the last 15 years. Here's photos of me doing it. Here's a bunch of references. So your background and your ability, and more explicitly, your experience of doing that job is there for all to see. If you bid for a construction project, or more specifically a demolition project, let's say taking down a 20-story tower block, one of the first questions you will receive as part of the bid document is, have you ever taken down a 20-story building before? Oh, yeah, we have. Look, we've done 20 of them last year. Here's the track record. Here's all the details. We've got a video to prove that we've done them before, and that gets you forward. In government, I don't believe the question is even asked. And I said at the very top of that thing, the way that cabinet reshuffles work, you're in charge of education today or transport today. And then somebody on high, Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, whoever it might be, says, we need to have a bit of reshuffle. We need to reorganise things. You've been in charge of transport. Yes, I've really understand the transport industry now, and its part in the way that the country runs. Yeah, well, forget about that. You're doing agriculture next, or you're doing education or defence. Just because you've been quite good at organising haulage doesn't necessarily make you ideal for defending the nation. Your thoughts, please. What have we got here? Mick says, Mark, maybe your son was trying to prompt a memory of Tiger Tyner Burning Bright, that epic poem by William Blake. Maybe, but would you not have written Tiger? We may never know. Jim Turner says, who elects these useless wankers? Well, initially, I guess we do, because you generally become a minister because you're an MP, and to become an MP, somebody needs to basically put their cross against your name at the ballot box. So I guess the overall answer is, but I mean, I genuinely wonder just how these jobs are allocated. I mean, the new education secretary apparently is a long-time friend of Andy Burnham. She tipped him to be the next leader of the Labour Party about 10 years ago. So, it's a bit of an old pals act. But does anyone sort of sit there with bits of paper with all their CVs on it and think, he spent some time in business. He was working in the City of London, understands business and finance. He would make an ideal business person, business secretary. Or do they just put a load of ping pong balls in a big bag, shake it up and go, oh, Jonathan Reynolds, he's doing business now. Does he know anything about it? No, but his name came out the bag. What the hell? Burnham is Starmer Mark II. I'm doing the same thing that I do with the England football team. My head and my heart both know that Andy Burnham, like every prime minister before him, is doomed to fail. But he's arrived. I don't know if you saw his address. No podium, no script, and I realised that the fact that there was no script and no podium is every bit as staged as if there were. But he does give an air of authenticity, way more than Keir Starmer. The only thing I would say is, as I've said about the lady that's now heading up the education department, another Mancunian. I've got nothing against Mancunian as a people. They're absolutely fine. Terrible taste in football teams, but the one thing I would say is it does feel like it's not just a northern stronghold; it's an anti-southern stronghold. I'm getting that feeling. Dan saying it's unbelievable. It really is. It really is. Jim Turner saying, given his love of golf, I'd say it was Tiger Woods. This was before he took up golf. This was probably 15 years ago. And it's still there, still on his phone. Government is like play school. Kids would do a better job. I think they probably would. But, and maybe, I always think this about both politics and trade associations. Because your time in the hot seat is limited one way or another, you'll either be hauled off to do something else, or you'll be voted out, or your party will be voted out, and therefore you lose that job. There doesn't seem to be any incentive to put people in place that actually understand what they're doing. And bearing in mind, I'm sure Jonathan Reynolds is a very smart guy. Whatever the woman's name over on education is, I'm sure very smart. I'm sure Angela Rayner is very, very smart. But when you take on a job for which you're not qualified, one of your biggest issues is a learning curve. So taking Jonathan Reynolds, the Secretary of State for Business, Innovation and Science, as an example, he's probably got probably up until Christmas to figure out what the bloody hell he's in charge of. Yes, he'll be surrounded by civil servants and flunkies and stuff like that, but he needs to understand what it is that he is in charge of. Because he's not from that background. If you actually took somebody from the business world or the innovation world or the science world, they wouldn't need to do that. They would have zero. So they would begin to affect change and hopefully improvement almost immediately. Whereas we've now got to wait for Jonathan Reynolds, Angela Rayner, and whoever the education secretary is to get themselves up to speed. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. And bearing in mind, Andy Burnham, he's arrived on the crest of a wave, certainly Labour Party wise, but he's already on borrowed time. He is counting down. He's taken the top job, but he's already counting down to the next general election, when in all possibility, all likelihood, his party may well be out of power. Effectively, he's probably got a couple of years in which to prove to the UK electorate that actually the Labour Party was a good idea. It was Keir Starmer that was a bad idea. Look how much we've improved things since Andy Burnham came into power. So why put somebody in place in all these high-profile positions that are going to take 6 months, possibly even 12 months, to get their feet under the table and to begin to affect the change that will get you across the finish line in the next general election? It seems like madness to me. Mick Norton says, imagine how uncomfortable Streeting will be when he's next pitched in with a group of hairy-ass squaddies. Yeah, absolutely. Although, having said that, I'm trying to wean myself off of US politics. But have you seen this absolute tit they have as the Secretary of Defense in America? Guy called Pete Hegseth, ex-TV, Fox TV guy. Oh, my God. He couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, and he's calling for testosterone checks for the US military. What a tit, honestly. And again, I mean, that's a poor appointment among a number of poor appointments. But when you're in charge of the world's biggest military, and you've decided who's the best person for this job. A former general? A former soldier? No, a Fox TV host with a drink problem, allegedly. Really? You think that's a good idea, do you? This is a man with access to the nuclear codes. Anybody else feeling deeply uncomfortable about that? Because I know I am. And why are we not reaching out to industry? Maybe because you have to understand the way that the political machinations work. Maybe you do need a minister for business, a minister for education, a minister for farming and agriculture. Maybe you do need one of those. But rather than surrounding them with nothing but civil servants, lackeys, flunkies, yes men and women who themselves are eyeing a career progression through politics. What about surrounding them with a few people from the bit of the country that they're actually responsible for? So in terms of defence, get a couple of generals or a couple of colonels in there or a couple of rear admirals and get them to, you do realise, mate, what you're saying there is complete bollocks. Warships don't work like that. Maybe you have a bit of that. Maybe when you're talking about business, actually have a committee of business people that have been there and done it. And I'm not talking about these big sort of stockholder-friendly or shareholder-friendly companies. I'm talking about the people that have dragged themselves up by the bootstraps and have actually done it themselves. Why are we not calling on them? Why are we not calling upon individual teachers, not education boards, but individual teachers to help guide the way that education works in the future? Jim Turner says, them at the top have realised a soulless robot creates hate, so they've replaced him with a man from CNA crossed with Joe 90. Same shite, different wanker. So not a fan then, Jim, no? No. The main danger of these incompetent ministers is the dearth of daily shite. They're served up by the influencers who are at their tail. Now, interestingly, I probably should have prepared this a bit better, but there was a thing on LinkedIn yesterday. There's a guy called Peter Apps, APPS. You can find him on LinkedIn. He's over on Substack as well. He's done a lot of coverage of Grenfell. And he's done, he basically works in and around the built environment, so construction and that kind of thing, as I say, Grenfell. And he works for titles like The Guardian. I think he's a freelance, but he works for The Guardian and other newspapers as well. He was recently tapped up by a PR company representing a construction-related business who wanted to pay him to either publish stories that were pro this company or to publish stories that were negative about regulation or negative about their rivals. Now, Peter Apps is a proper journalist. There's not many of us left, but he's a proper journalist. He was tapped up. So what did he do? He agreed to a meeting. And what did he do at that meeting? He filmed them. You can probably find it on the Guardian website, but if you search on LinkedIn for Peter Apps, APPS, you can see that. That is the sort of way that these things are working. And interestingly, the PR company heading up that tapping up of a journalist, or that attempted tapping up of a journalist, was quite influential in Tory government circles not many years ago. Used to be, and I hate to say it, I do genuinely hate to say it because it is how I earn my living. You know that thing that don't believe what you read? That used to really annoy me, because if you read what I say, you can believe it, because I've gone out of my way to make sure you can believe it. I can't defend it anymore because that kind of thing is going on, and it's going on all the time. And it might not be going on necessarily with journalists, although clearly that is the case. On the same subject, later this afternoon, I've got an online meeting with the organisers of one of next year's exhibitions, plant exhibitions. They have mentioned two words that send shivers down my spine. They've said media partner. They clearly don't know me at all. But I'm going through the I'm going to go through the conversation basically to see what they have planned. But I've already seen a number of influencers in our industry shilling. I don't mean the money, I mean selling their soul for. They are shilling for one of the exhibitions already. It's almost a year away and they're already doing it. And money will have changed hands to make them say positive things about one of these exhibitions. Don't believe the hype, people. It's a sorry old state of affairs, isn't it? And part of the whole notion of an independent, free and fair press was the fact that we would hold up a mirror to this kind of thing. We would point and shout about corruption and collusion and underhand business practices. And now we apparently, I'm going to use Jim's term, we, or rather they, have their head in the trough as well. Take the money out of politics and the pigs will leave the trough. The snouts are far too far buried, I think. And there's too many vested interests. I was talking earlier just now about trade associations. You know, trade associations with millions of pounds in the bank, they don't need it. You know, they're supposed to be not-for-profit organisations. They don't need that money. They're not spending it to improve things for their members or for the industry. They're doing it because they can. And then, you know, if you were to say, why don't we do this to improve the industry? Oh no, can't do that. Can't loosen the purse strings for a moment because, you know, we've gathered all this money. But what are you going to do with it? Oh, look at it. Look at our bank statement and pat ourselves on the back about how clever we've been amassing this small fortune. I will let you know how my conversation goes later today. I'm not hopeful, let's put it like that, but I'll keep you posted. People, please go and have a fantastic day. I'm going to be back tomorrow for the final time this week. Yet more of the same. Until then, everyone, have a good day. Look after yourselves. And if a minister or a senior executive reminds you of their expertise on all things demolition and construction, just know they're completely full of shit. Final comment comes from Jim Turner, says, if politicians had to fund themselves, you'd have a higher degree of successful people becoming MPs. And listen, I mean, there is always that argument, maybe we don't pay our MPs enough. And I realise the notion of paying somebody, I don't know, 120, 130 grand a year for being a piss poor minister, it seems wrong. But if you paid an education minister 200 grand, 250 grand a year, and they actually made marked improvements to the UK education system, fair enough. I'd quite like our children to be better educated. You know, if we could pay somebody £250,000 to make our country safer, you know, better defended, that seems like a good return. But all the time we're paying them what is today a relatively small wage. I realise I wouldn't mind 130 grand a year. But so saying that, you're not going to drag people out of industry to take up those top jobs. So rather than getting the best people for the job, we're making do. We're basically employing what's left when all the proper jobs have been snapped up. And on that thought, have a good day, everyone. See you soon.